So, good morning everyone. It's now going on nearly 11:30 on Sunday, the 20th of September, 2020. I'm having a look at commodities and I'm going to start off here with gold. So, to kind of summarize what the issue has been in terms of technical analysis, effectively gold is overvalued on the monthly time frame. So it's normal. It'll kind of, it's trending. I'm still bullish on gold. Excuse me, in the longer run. But in the shorter term, I think it would be healthier for gold to take a bit of a breather, come down to 1800. That's kind of the target. That sort of be the minimum correction that I'd like to see happen. A maximum, which I think is excessive, would be a 16 down to 1600, 1550, which puts it at about, so the difference between sort of a 382 fib retracement and a 618. All right, so that kind of area, it's reasonable. It's not completely crazy. It doesn't mean that gold isn't going to come back up to 2000 in the next few months. It just means there would be a shorter term release of that kind of pressure. So that's what the monthly is kind of saying. There's a bit of an indecision candle last month and a bit of an inside bearish candle at the moment. So the potential for kind of over the next couple of months for gold to do a bit of a correction is still pretty much on the table. However, looking at the weekly in isolation, this is really nice and bullish. It's had a consolidation. It's produced some bullish signals off that weekly 1900 support and looks keen to continue. But it has to get through the 2000 level first of all. So the weekly in isolation looks nice and bullish. The monthly looks overextended and due for a correction. So there's that contradiction there. Looking at the daily. So the daily has some interesting, this is not a trend line. This is not a trend line. This is just me shaping out this bearish setup with lower highs coming in. And I spoke about this last week. I posted this up onto LinkedIn. Is what I'm looking for this week is to see price either continue up and break up through that 2000 level, which would mean that, in my opinion, it's going to continue to be bullish. Or alternatively, and this is more where I'm leaning towards, is to see price come back down and retest this 1900 level. So specifically kind of come down towards 1907 and produce another kind of a low here. And I'm also going to look at how that price action behaves. So here we've got some strong rejections because there's a lot of buyers in. If price comes down, it's a nice solid candle. In other words, it doesn't have a good strong rejection of that. The implication is that it's potentially going to break down and correct. So based off the monthly, that is a very valid supposition. Technically, it's perfectly valid and it's good for gold. It just means that gold can take a bit of a breather and then it can resume its longer term uptrend. So that's what I'm looking for here. And as I said, of course, if price comes up and breaks the previous high, breaks over that 2000 line, then of course I start to look for bullish opportunities. But until it really decides which way it's going to go, the problem is that trading it is very high risk because it doesn't really have a set direction in mind. So as I said, the weekly is bullish, the monthly is overextended, and the daily is producing sort of a 60-40 kind of bearish potential. But as I said, it's produced a lower high here, and a move down could potentially, and this could be a trading opportunity for me to enter on the break of this level with a really nice, tight, reasonable stop loss, and then looking to take profit as we head down towards 1800. So that's a potential trade opportunity for me on this side, and that's my rationale behind that. Look at silver, it's actually got a very similar potential pattern setting up here as well, potential lower high, and then looking for it to break below that 26 level and head low. It's still consolidating on the weekly, it's still sitting on monthly support. It's got pretty much the same setup here. It's overextended on the monthly, inside bearish candle, indicating that price could be hesitating and then considering in isolation a return or at least a retracement down towards 21 and 19. Interesting though, on my list of what looks very nice and bullish, of course, so far is copper. Copper is just pushing through to fresh highs. It's going to encounter resistance almost immediately as it comes up. Monthly significant resistance, but looks really nice and bullish in isolation here. So that's pretty kind of cool. For shorter term opportunities, I think that looks pretty good. Then just noting here on platinum that it's really struggling to get through its current resistance level. Attempts and fails. No clear direction, no clear trend on the daily, and the monthly has no clear direction. So that's a pass for me. Platinum is not on the table. Palladium actually, it has to get through this 2400 level, but it does look nice and bullish. It's struggling a little bit there on the weekly. The monthly looks great. So that monthly is a really nice, happy, healthy trend in isolation. So a longer term, to me, is reasonable for it to hit that 2500 level, potentially onwards towards 3000. And so the momentum on this is a little bit stronger than with silver and gold, but it still has to really get past this 2400 level. So I like this in terms of kind of strong copper looking good, palladium looking good, platinum looking a mess at the moment, gold and silver potentially looking like they're going to correct, and so that's kind of what I'm keeping an eye on. So then having a look at Brent crude. So taking into account that the longer term for the crude oils is that it's generally down. We've produced a swing high within the moving averages, have reordered themselves into a bearish mode, and we've come up against previous support as resistance. There's a lot to support the idea in isolation that this is bearish and that there's the potential for it to head at least towards 30. So that's in isolation, looking at that on a monthly basis. Looking at it on a weekly, what I would notice in favor of the bulls is that we've produced a swing low off a level of support. So in other words, this is a very bullish signal. Okay, and overall, this is just bizarre behavior anyway. That's fine. And this would really indicate that there's just a fine line between the buyers and the sellers, and that it's not really, no one's in control. But this usually indicates a significant breakout. So there is no clear trend here. If I argue, I could argue this is a higher low, and therefore this is bullish and likely to take another run back up towards that level. The problem is that the monthly looks very good as it is, and I think this week is going to clarify that. So then coming on to the daily. The daily has produced an indecision candle, which could be a potential swing high, which means that this would... So if the monthly is going to play out, it's actually quite straightforward. If the monthly is going to play out, the daily is going to head lower this week. All right, the daily is going to head back down towards 40 and below. The weekly will give it up, and the monthly will start to unfold in the longer term, which is what we've been talking about. And again, I don't really care whether I'm right or wrong. What I care about is that the market becomes clear in terms of the forks in the road and the potential mixed signals it's giving here. If price breaks above this and continues upwards, then certainly this monthly potential is not looking as likely, and the weekly starts to look more likely that it's going to continue upwards. And so this is what I'm really keeping an eye on. It's done quite a fair retracement, so that means there's a fair amount of buyers in the market. That is not conclusive. It just means that it's not all bearish. There's definitely a struggle going on, but this is a potential for it to continue down. So this week, or certainly a week from now, if the market has continued higher, I would say that this potential outcome is starting to potentially change, that is not going to be, potentially in the medium term, is not going to be the outcome and moves to the upside. But it still doesn't really give me any solid tradable opportunities. The move to the downside offers the best money-making opportunities because there's this alignment then between the longer-term trends and the shorter-term trends, and then the momentum becomes sort of, relatively speaking, safer to trade. And so that's effectively the biggest kind of thing I've got to keep an eye on for this week, looking here certainly at West Texas Intermediate. It's got the same setup on the monthly, but the daily is looking increasingly bullish, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't hit 42, for example, and continue down. But that is what I have to be looking for this week. So, and certainly even on the lower time frames, if I'm looking for intraday trading opportunities, I'm going to head into resistance up here. So it doesn't offer anything that's outstanding in terms of that. The dilemma is still there, but I have to acknowledge that this is a bullish recovery, and so I have to keep that in mind, that could ultimately do stuff. So we've headed into the 618 territory here. There's a 786 retracement if we do that, but again, it would have to literally, in order for the monthly to unfold in a healthy, sort of rational, technical, analytical fashion, this would have to immediately this week, Monday or Tuesday latest, would actually have to start heading back down towards that and produce, and then start to head low. So that would have to be the outcome. If it doesn't do that, the picture either becomes more muddy or it becomes bullish, but it certainly doesn't remain bearish. And so those are distinct clarifications that I'm waiting on for this week. That's it on commodities for me. So I see some, basically there's a few that I have to wait for them to unfold before the money-making opportunities become available. So in other words, shorter opportunities on both oil and gold, if they then start to head lower in the first few days of the week or potentially break through those key levels. But they are currently just sitting between what are they going to do in terms of that. Whereas I'm seeing some potential on copper as well as potential on palladium for some shorter term opportunities to the upside.